next speaker will be Eric Eberly. Eric Eberly is the Deputy Program Manager for the Centennial Challenge Program. And Eric's going to speak with us today about the team registration, qualification of teams, and what the prize structure is all about. So, Eric?
Thank you, Jim. All right, so far, presentations that you've seen really covers the breadth of why we're having a challenge, what the goals are for NASA to extend the technology, and this is the first of many where we're starting to dig into the depth of it, the fine details of this challenge. So I'm going to be covering eligibility and the prize amounts. Now, go to the next slide when you're ready. All right, so Centennial Challenges program walks a fine line between what we're told to do and what we want to do. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that with your companies and perhaps school or any other place, or even just at home. So the program, we want to make prizes available to as many people as we can, incentivize the technology advancements, and where NASA, especially those that are NASA, the ones that NASA is interested in, and this can occur also commercial and academia. We also need to make sure that we're inspiring the next generation. We engage in public appearances where we're encouraging high school students, even kids are coming up, and so the program is looking to incentivize the next generation, not only this generation as well. So, but we're also told what to do. Congress gives us the law, and we have to follow. That's just a reference to what NASA is able to do. So we're told who we can give prize money to. We're told how we can give it. And so the next few charts is really just to kind of start digging into that. Now it's not going to capture every single case, and we'll do the best to address those through these slides. But if you see a case that isn't covered, by all means, you can come ask at the very end or come talk to me later. All right, next slide, please. All right, so may I compete? The biggest thing is I want to emphasize everybody can participate. Everybody. In fact, we encourage everybody to participate. We have other challenges where non-eligible people compete just to say, hey, we won the challenge. We didn't necessarily get the money, but we won the challenge. We are only allowed to award prize money to businesses that are incorporated in the United States. Businesses or entities, actually. And then also U.S. citizens or permanent residents. And I want to go back to my first statement. Again, I emphasize that participation is open to everybody. But we are only allowed to award prize money to these cases. And lastly, in those two instances, whether it's a business or entity or a person, U.S. citizen, federal employees and federal entities may not participate. We're already being paid to develop some of this technology. Why? It wouldn't make sense to award an amount to a federal entity or a federal employee if they're already under that scope to develop that technology. It wouldn't make sense. So again, with the Centennial program, we're looking to reach out to the non-traditional places, that, looking outside the box, per se, to look for solutions that are not typical. Next chart. All right, so looking at the different prizes. All right, so we mentioned that there's two derbies, the Lunar Derby and the Deep Space Derby. Digging into, looking at the Deep Space, so the Lunar Derby first. If you're a CubeSat, which we've defined as 6U 14 kilograms, if you're a CubeSat, achieves lunar orbit, you share in $1.5 million, with the maximum of $1 million to one person, or one team, I should say, just to get around in orbit. So the next is the communication arena. We're looking at advancements in burst rate as well as total volume. So burst rate, you have first prize goes $225,000, and second place $25,000. Total volume $675,000, and $75,000 to second place. The longevity, which in this case, longevity in lunar orbit, we see that as more difficult than just getting launched past the moon, and longevity, two different technology advances there. You'll share, the total prize there is $450,000 for first place and $50,000 for second place. Derby, the Deep Space Derby, similar amounts for the communications aspect, $225,000 and $25,000 for first and second place for burst rate, and then $675,000 and $75,000 for first and second place in total volume. The longevity is $225,000 and $25,000 for first and second place. And distance is the same, $225,000 for first, $25,000 for second. Now, the in-space competitions are not the only competitions. As was mentioned already, we have 4 ground tournaments where teams may participate, whether you're vying for the EM1 opportunity or not. And let me re-say that. Let me say that again. If you are going on a third-party launch, you may participate in the ground tournaments. Now, if you are vying for the EM1 launch, the one you absolutely have to participate in is ground tournament 4. And I know Jim's going to go into a little bit more detail with that later, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I just, again, emphasize, even though you're going third party, you may participate in ground tournaments. And so we have an incremental funding for each ground tournament, and Jim will talk about that later. But the most one team may receive is $100,000 through the ground tournaments. All in all, that's $5 million allocated for this challenge. Next chart. So when we dig into the eligibility, we've already received many questions, and I've put up some examples here as we step through it again. It's not all encompassing. We've been asked about foreign nationals. Can foreign nationals participate? Yes, they may participate. They may not be a team leader, though. Prize money will be awarded to the team leader. It's up to the team leader to disperse it among the team. That's how foreign nationals may participate. So, as an example, students at a university, college, tech school, high school even, they may participate. Again, not as the team leader, though. Another example, employees of a U.S.-based company, but they must sit inside the U.S. borders. May a service or component provider participate or compete? Short answer, yes. It could be a team member, team leader. You may also contract to more than one team. Let's say you organize a team yourself. You're an antenna provider. I think that's actually one of the examples here. You're an antenna provider. You form a team, but then you also contract to another team to provide them an antenna. Now, there's no limits there. Again, as long as you're U.S.-based. Also, another example there is a company that provides the ground services. You can contract to more than one team, as long as you are not listed as a team member. that therefore you're not, if you're a ground service provider, you contract to them, you're not listed as a team member, you're not eligible for the prize money, but you're still participating with the teams, providing them services. And just one other note, these are kind of digging into eligibility. There's other requirements within the rules that you have to abide by as well. I'm just trying to address those. So, next chart. Some other another questions we've come up is federal entities and federal employees. I mentioned a little bit about this already. As if they are acting within the scope of their work scope, they may not participate. They're not eligible to win prizes. And again, I emphasize that they're not eligible to win a prize. Now they may mentor, they may participate, they may not be team leader, but they can advise. The federal entity may enter a service contract with a team only if other teams are entered into similar service contracts. For instance, if a team decides to use DSN and they work out the details of the contract with DSN, that contract must also be available to other teams for the same whatever fee, or if it's exactly the same service, they get the same amount charged. So just running through examples here. Again, civil servant called me, he does nanotechnology research. Nothing to do with satellites, nothing to do with communications. Yep, you can participate. That's not in his scope, or his work scope. One who develops propulsion for the Army missile defense may not participate. That's directly related to the challenge. We're looking for propulsion technology advancements. Federal lab studies coastal marine life may participate as a team member. And another example here, federal lab that develops and tests components for small satellites. They may not participate. However, they may procure hardware services for teams A and B, so long as the contract between them are similar. Next chart. I want to make sure I give some time at the end for questions. May a government contracted employee compete? They may not compete if it's within the scope of the contract. And they are physically located at that federal facility, at a federal facility. So again, just a couple examples here. A U.S. company is contracted for ion propulsion. They may not participate as a team leader. They may enter agreements with the team, but may not be eligible for prize money. Another company contracts for CubeQuest dispensers. Yes, they may participate. We're not looking for technology advancements in dispensers. We're looking for advancement in, once you've been dispensed. And then another example, Army contractor is developing radiation protection, but does not reside at a contracted facility. They may participate as a team leader or a member. Next chart. So, as I start out, the challenge, Centennial Challenge program, we want to extend opportunities to as many people as we are able. We're also given governance by the U.S. Congress. So that's where this eligibility comes from. We have up to $5 million for this challenge, both for the ground tournaments in space, and then the competitions. By all means, were meant to encourage technology advancements through non-traditional services or sources. Anyone may participate, but as I mentioned, we can only award prizes to U.S. citizens or permanent residents, companies that are based in the United States, and not federal employees or federal entities. And then, again, these examples are by no means every situation. So if you have circumstances that you think may be an exception, again, feel free to ask it now, or if you want to speak to me on the side, that's fine. But I'll take questions at this time.
So just to clarify, if we've got an SBIR for CubeSat component, we cannot lead one of the teams?
We talked a lot about that. And it's the SBR, repeat the question. SBIR, you have an SBIR contract specifically for CubeSats.
We've got a component that could go in a CubeSat.
Yeah.
And if I'm interpreting that correctly, we can provide the component to other teams, but we can't lead a team ourselves.
I think that's true, yes. You cannot lead a team yourself, you can provide a component. Yeah, okay, so you may be a team member, but not a team leader.
One of the leading teams?
That's correct. We will award the money to the team leader. It's up to the team members to get the money from the team leader. I saw him over here.
I guess a little bit of clarification of where this is all coming from and why it's kind of vague is that we do have a congressional authorization for how we run our prize competitions. So as we can tell, Congress has come to us a couple times before and have kind of questioned who we awarded prize money to. We can't award it to more foreign nationals, understand. And then the concept comes in of, like we talked about in the past, back and forth about if we give you government money to develop something, and then you come back and you give it back to us in the prize competition, oh, that's great, here's some prize money, and we give you money again, it doesn't look right. So it's all about, really about the optics. What makes walking around sense? So then we get to the value of, well, when is too much money? Is an SBIR 1, $100,000, is that too much money? SBIR 2, $250,000? How about a $500,000? Oh, $1 million contract, is that too much money? So you kind of, $10 million contract, well, that's way, obviously that's way too much money. But there's that gray area of what's acceptable, what isn't acceptable. And so we've had this discussion quite a bit between ourselves to where SBIR as a team competitor is fine. We're not accepting it as a team leader. Government contract, where you're actually funding, that would be unacceptable in our minds. And then there's other aspects and rules as far as FFRDCs and those things, as far as what their participation capabilities are.
But wouldn't that be, wouldn't you have to look at the scope of the SIVR? Because if it's around electronic power systems, and you're really concerned about propulsion and communications, unless it's linked to those two.
And that's why we have the, it's within the scope of the contract.
Yeah,
So within the scope of the SBIR, then that's where
And
this.
then it's going to come to case by case basis. Because what if the scope of the contract is build me a CubeSat? Well, frickin' A. You know, what if the scope of the contract is build me a transceiver, just a transmitter only? You know, that's so. It is going to be a case by case basis as well. So if you have any questions, by all means, give Jim an email. Give Eric and myself an email, and we'll discuss it on a case by case basis as well.
Okay. So this.
I had a question on the international side. Assuming for a moment that the team is following all export control rules, take that aside, is there a distinction between a foreign national team member working in the U.S. versus somebody who's not even labeled as a team member? Like, did you have a high school in Australia to make a logo for you, or is with no transfer of funds or whatever? I don't know. What is the what's
So,
the limit here?
I guess what the contract, so within the team itself, if you work out some deal between a high school or some entity off, foreign national, off outside of the United States, if you work out a deal within the team yourself where they don't get prize money, but they provide something for you, maybe you pay them, or if you just, whatever, royalties, I don't know. That's between the team. Again, that's why we really emphasize that we're going to pay the team leader, who has to be either a U.S.-based company, a U.S. citizen, or permanent resident. Within the team itself, that's where we felt that it was okay to open up the realm where foreign nationals can participate as team members, or even where you're paying them. And we still abide by us paying only U.S. citizens, U.S.-based companies.
I'm still a little vague about.
What you do within, what you do within your team is really up to the team, yeah, obviously the team, but, and the team leader. So we're defining that, if you're a one-person band, you're a team leader, team member, then you need to abide by all these.
And we're gonna communicate with the team leader. So if you're international and you think you're gonna go grab a homeless guy out of New York, who's a US citizen, to be your team leader, that won't float, because we're gonna be asking the team leader the questions. We'd be expecting the team leader to have the technical competence capability to answer those questions.
Right.
Okay. I saw lots of other hands.
So we're 5 minutes over schedule time, but I know this is a very topic of high interest. So let's take a couple more questions and then we'll move on. But you can, feel free to corner Eric or Sam or myself during the break or afterwards and ask more detailed questions about eligibility. But let's take a couple more questions.
Just a couple more questions. Well, I know I saw a hand over here from JPL. Yes, JPL is a federal election. And I know, the question comes, I know JPL is developing a CubeSat for communications, but we've looked at that CubeSat and we're looking for technology advancements beyond, they're using current technology, we're looking for advancements beyond their technology. Okay.
So could I follow up on that, because it is related? So I think we should be able to provide those types of services under this competition.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes, that was, I think that was one of my examples, is that, I mean, JPL may provide services or components so long as it's made available to all teams. Yes, that's correct. Okay, I've been favoring this side, is there, want to make sure I give this side a chance to do over here? Okay.
Yeah, you've got fairly clearly defined mass limits and volume, apparently non-employee volume limits, for whatever the furthermost flight article is. What about, and how is the other infrastructure that may be associated with supporting the mission, how does that play in to this? Or is that just up to the teams to work that out?
So the 6U 14 kilograms is no matter which derby you're going in.
Right, so that's that's before deployment.
Before
Before deployment, okay, but how do you support that 6U? Okay, there's some set of infrastructure to get you back to Earth, okay, with respect to that data. And that unbundling, if you will, can be a critical element in this.
Jim's shaking his head like he understands, so I'll let him answer.
So I think if you're referring to ground support equipment, anything that's not part of the space segment, there's no limits as to with regard to how many ground stations, what sort of ground supporters.
You have flight support equipment that's not part of it turns out that it's an intermediary to the ground.
The space segment is limited to a 6U-sized CubeSat.
So you're, I think you're maybe referring to a relay, like a relay station?
Yes.
Okay, no, we're not interested in relay stations.
We'll talk some more details about that, but the answer is no. So it's just, the space segment is limited to 160 CubeSat.
All right, so again, I know there's lots of other questions about eligibility. We need to move on to the next topic. I'm here, and if during the breaks, pull me off to the side, and we'll try to address your questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Eric.